Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau.
The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Photo Finale, Media Clip, Advertech Inc., Got Photo, IQ, Photobook AI, the IPI Member Network, and MailPix. Hello again, and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. We're joined today by Ed Lee and David Haueter of Rise Above Research, the imaging industry's newest marketing research firm, and one of the few left standing, if that's the case. So welcome, Ed and David.
Thank you, Gary.
So tell us a little bit about your journey to starting up this new firm. Ed?
I know, that's a great question, Gary. I
didn't expect a little bit about your background and experience.
I didn't expect that question. Well, my background comes with about 20 years worth of experience in the market research industry, working for a couple of the major digital imaging research firms in the US here. And even prior to that, have roots in Xerox and Kodak on the product marketing side of things there.
Okay. And David, in addition to being a sports car enthusiast, what's your background?
Similar to Ed, I've been an industry analyst for 20 years, most recently with Keypoint Intelligence before Ed and I started up, and also Gartner before that. Mm-hmm. And I also have a background at with Sharp Electronics and Xerox. So kind of started on the office equipment side, but then kind of moved into the photography side.
So tell me a little bit about Rise Above Research. What is the market segments that it's going to be serving?
Well, the company is a market research and consulting company, and we're focusing in on the digital imaging, digital photography space. The areas that we do cover, we're looking at digital capture in terms of photography, mobile imaging, as well as areas around what consumer behaviors are, as well as professional photographers. Mm-hmm. In addition, we're studying what's happening in the new imaging applications like augmented reality, virtual reality, as well as artificial intelligence and how that applies to imaging.
Great. And David, you're more on the output side of the business. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have, we're offering two services. One is on photo printing and one is on photo merchandise. So the photo printing, as you can imagine, covers traditional photo prints like 4x6, 5x7, et cetera. And on the merchandise side, we're looking at everything, but really kind of focusing on books, cards, calendars, and wall decor. But it's ever changing, and the good thing about Ed and I with just us is that we can be really flexible and change direction pretty quickly if the market requires that.
So Ed, it sounds to me like on the capture side, you're really talking about a space that is beyond the traditional DSLR, compact camera, camcorder, smartphone space. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you're discovering there?
Yeah, if we go back and look at photography and imaging to begin with, it started with film, progressed to digital cameras, and moved on to the mobile imaging there. And the question now comes up in terms of where does the industry go from here? Mobile imaging is the king right now, and probably 90% of images that are being captured today around the world are on a mobile phone, smartphone. But looking forward, I don't see that as the ultimate next step for imaging. The question will be, what is next behind mobile phones there? And I see something in the area of a wearable type of imaging device, maybe a headset or something to that, where eyeglasses, where
spectacles and things like that.
Yep. And where now it's becoming just a more integral part of your body there. And
so that's kind of interesting because people have tried that. There have been a few startups over the years who have tried that sort of thing. I think Canon's got one now. They're trying to crowdsource or something. What is the appeal of something like that?
I guess one of the detriments with regards to smartphones is that it's in your pocket whenever you want to use it. You got to pull it out, you got to look at it, and now your focus is not on what's around you. Your focus is on that little screen that's in front of you. So if you're able to divorce yourself from that smartphone screen and have those images and that information in front of your eyes without having to take your eyes off of what else is around you, I see that as a next step for how do you enhance the experience around you, and with how does imaging help you?
But obviously there's going to be privacy concerns. There's going to be, a lot of technology that needs to come into play. So looking forward to a lot of exciting developments in that area, I'm sure, coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Privacy is going to be a big issue. And, those are things that the industry is going to have to address and deal with as the products and technologies and services roll out.
And as exciting as all that new technology is, really the bread and butter of the industry, the profit center of the industry has traditionally been the services side, which is what you're going to focus on, right, David? So what trends are you seeing in the output side of the business?
Well, a lot of it has already happened. I mean, we've seen a big transition to mobile over the last several years. I think that's still happening. I think there's still people that don't really know exactly how to print from their phone, even though it's been, the ability to do that has been around for such a long time. But also, we're really going to be taking a look at how our current situation is affecting output. There's a couple sides to it. There's a positive side where you think, people have more time on their hands, they're home more, they can finally finish or start, a photo book project, for instance. And we're hearing some good things from within the industry that is actually happening. Another thing we're also keeping an eye on is how the whole retail versus online mix is going to be impacted by COVID-19 with, for instance, people may not want to go into a retail store as much. They may not want to touch a screen. If you walk up to a kiosk at a photo center and it's got fingerprints all over it, you're really going to want to touch that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, and we're going to keep a close eye on that.
Yeah, that's one of the kind of points of data that we've been hearing about is, with retail being basically shut down due to COVID-19, there's been a strong movement, especially among the independent retailers, the mom and pops, the labs, to going online because they've basically been forced to. Maybe they were dragging their feet, but then their kiosk vendor kind of kicks them in the rear and moves them online. Also to kind of embrace the idea that they don't have to produce everything themselves, right? Because that was sort of the point of a retail lab is, hey, we do everything here, but now they're connecting to some of the wholesale services, which is, again, growing their portfolio. So it's kind of kicked people in the rear, like I said before, to kind of push them over the hump. The emergency has kind of created this sort of impetus.
And that's just not in the photo industry. It's across all kinds of retail businesses now.
So Ed, one of the things that's happening in the device space that there seems to be a lot of hand wringing about is the decline in traditional cameras, right? We saw it with compact cameras being basically eaten alive by smartphones. And in the recent years, there's been a lot of discussion about DSLRs and mirrorless being cannibalized by smartphones. Not sure if that's the case. How much is the recent decline in sales due to smartphones, or is it due to things like COVID-19 where, people maybe are watching their budgets a little more?
The decline in this year really has been affected by the COVID virus there. I think already for 2020, we were expecting that the decline of shipments was going to continue, but it wasn't going to be as dramatic as we're seeing right now. We were forecasting overall, well, we're forecasting now overall about a 28% decline in shipments of cameras in North America with COVID taken into account. So we're hoping that as things open up again, that people are going to be feeling more comfortable going out and taking their cameras with them and taking photos and getting ready for the holiday season. If COVID continues into the holiday season, you could see, a significant decline occurring still. But right now, as things are still rolling out, we're expecting and hoping that Q4 will still be a good time of the year for the vendors and the retailers.
Well, it seems to me that with, the conventional wisdom was always, you don't really need a DSLR anymore unless you're doing a very specialized thing, like you're maybe shooting kids sports, or you're really into portraiture, street photography, or something like that, or you're going on trips, right? Trips, vacations.
Right.
That trip to Italy that you've always wanted to go on has been the big driver. And now with travel being pretty much shut down for looks at least like, coming up to the year, how much do you think travel is going to be impacting either camera purchases, which I think is going to be significant, and also output?
I think the restriction on travel is actually going to have a bigger effect on the number of photos that are actually taken versus the devices that are sold there.
Okay.
I did an exercise just recently trying to estimate how many photos were lost as a result of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics being postponed a year.
Yeah.
And the number I came up with, and I was just trying to get to an order of magnitude, was about 1 billion photos aren't going to be taken this year because of one event was being postponed.
Wow. That's crazy. And for comparison purposes, how many photos do you think are captured? You've recently put out a statement on that, right?
Yeah. Last year, we estimated about 1.3 trillion photos were captured globally. And because, again, of the effects of COVID, we're looking at about a 15% decline in photo capture and projecting about a 1.1 trillion photo figure for 2020.
And on the other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and even though COVID is keeping people inside, they're still taking pictures. They're taking pictures of different things, of activities that are happening in the house, of their house, of their immediate surroundings and things like that. And
obviously, with at the bare minimum 1 billion fewer pictures taken, probably closer to a quarter, I don't know, probably billions and billions of pictures not being taken. There's fewer printing opportunities. Are you seeing that, David?
Yeah, definitely. Just with, like you said, fewer vacations, fewer events to go to, the places that people would typically take pictures and then print them, there's fewer of those happening for sure. We are hoping that, people may be doing staycations, things like that, where they're doing things around the house more, and hopefully they're still taking pictures and chronicling those events, and they'll still want to, make prints and, do a photo book of the year or a photo album, something like that.
Also home decor. I mean, I've been hearing that's sort of a trend with this new cocooning that's happening. People are looking at their walls thinking, well, if I can't go to a vacation, I can always put one on my wall. So
yeah, and there is that, like I said before, there is that opportunity where people have more time on their hands and they maybe want to finish projects that they maybe never got around to. And that's one thing we've seen over the years, is that people tend to know that they should print photos and they'd like to, but they just don't have time to do it and go through all their photos. So maybe they have the time now. The whole unemployment thing could come into play too, where, people may be more careful with their money about what they spend it on, and like, I can look at photos on my phone. I'm not going to bother making a $40 photo book. But on the other hand, a product like a photo book makes a very meaningful gift that probably is just as meaningful as other more expensive gifts. So there is opportunity for someone to buy a photo book as a gift instead of something else that, might be more expensive. So there's kind of pluses and minuses on both sides of it right now.
Sure, I get that.
Yeah, and Gary, one of the themes that we've been promoting recently here is that there's a lot of photos that are sitting stuck on hard drives in the cloud, on cameras, on phones, that are worth going back and reviewing and seeing if there are any special photos that deserve to be printed or made into a photo product. We put out an infographic that shows that in the 2010s, globally, 8.6 trillion photos were captured in that decade.
Right.
And if you think about that, a decade is a long time. And in which case, you look at somebody who's 20 years old, that's half their lifetime. All right. Somebody even who's 30 years old, that's a third of their lifetime. You look back 10 years ago, what were you doing? There's in that 10-year span, there's got to be some photos today that are special memories that maybe weren't even special memories at that time, but you look back now and you go, wow, that baseball game where my son got that home run there. Back then it was a cool, event, but now it's even more special since he's, in his 20s or something like that.
Right. Well, also, I think you've touched on an interesting point because, in those past years, in that past decade, for example, there may not even have been some of those print products even available, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, look at, if you 10, 15 years ago, you didn't really have the opportunity to make a metal print as affordably and as high quality as you do now. I mean, I was going through some of my old canvas prints that I made, I think in the early 2000s, I think they were like Shutterfly. They sent me some code to do some samples and I made some, and it was horrible. I mean, and part of it was the printing technology in the early 2000s was just not what it is today.
Right.
And now when you look at it, it's like, maybe it's time to go back and revisit some of those cherished pictures that maybe you did have printed.
Yeah.
Now we can print them better. The media has greater longevity, greater permanence, definitely better color than it ever did. So, that's a message I think the industry could revisit.
Yeah. So the message being, don't just focus on trying to get people to print what they just took photos of just recently, but have them think about, what are their important photos from even the past decade, and go back and find those photos, print a few of those photos, and save those photos.
I think one of the things that the industry kind of wrestles with is monetization models, right? Because the traditional industry has always been built around this model of, capture, store, output sort of model, right? And we're going to make money on the output side. And then as other soft display technologies have come into play, websites and now apps, social media networks, they've really found ways to monetize imaging without that output step. And I think the traditional industry has really been left out of that discussion completely, right? I mean, if you think about it, Instagram is probably the most used photo app right now. Maybe you guys have better technology or better insight into that than I have, but I would say that's probably the number one.
One out there.
Yeah, Snapchat is probably up there too.
Yeah.
And neither one of those is a model driven by anything traditional.
Right.
What do you think the place is in the quote unquote traditional industry, whatever it is, in that future of that space where it seems all the growth is? Because what I'm seeing is there isn't a lot of VC money flying into a traditional output model. They're going to dump money into some weird sharing app or something like that.
Yeah, I think the VCs are looking for a quick way in and a quick way out and turn over their money in multiples there, and you're not going to find that, unfortunately, in the traditional photo printing space at this point, which is a fairly mature industry. But I also think that 10 or 20 years down the road, when you start trying to find some of those Instagram, Snapchat photos that you took, good luck.
Yeah.
At least if you print them out, you will have the hard copy version of them, whether or not you can find the digital file regardless.
Yeah, it's not really going to change unless consumer attitudes change. That's the hard part, is getting people to understand the value of print, the intangible aspect of it. And we've been saying this for a decade too, is that, if you want to go look for pictures from your 2000 vacation, it's a lot easier to find them on a photo book or on a photo album on your shelf than to try to go back and find them on your computer or your phone somewhere. But I wish the industry would do a better job of educating people on that. They haven't really done much at all on that line. The only one that I've seen that's actually done a pretty good job of it is MPix. They were sending out emails kind of, encouraging people to print photos and how it's so nice to hold a printed photo in your hand or a product in your hand. And I'm kind of surprised that more of the bigger vendors haven't really done anything on that line at all. They haven't really pushed it at all.
It's interesting you say it because, like, I'm sure, like you, I've got a Shutterfly account going back 20 some years. And, they've now send me an email almost every day. Hey, these are your pictures from 15 years ago. But they don't take the next step of like pre-creating a book for me or something like that. I mean, Google tried a little bit about that. Hey, we created a book for you, but they just recently canceled that type of service. So I'm interested, Ed, in your view in like where AI could take this to the next level. Maybe that's the next step that needs to take place, is some sort of intelligent assistance to say, hey, these are great pictures, and here's a story we've created for you out of this important moment.
Right. Yeah, no, AI is a tool, and a tool, meant to be employed and used there. And I think AI's purpose, or at least one of its objective, is to analyze photos and categorize them in many ways to help you organize some of your memories there. And from there, then you can start moving to the next step of saying, what's important. One of the things that we've talked about in the past, especially when it comes to a photo print, a 4x6 photo print, is, how do you increase the value of a 4x6 photo print? It's really hard because it's only a piece of paper.
Right.
How do you get people to pay more for a piece of paper? And it's like difficult.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we came down to the conclusion that in order to increase the value of the print, you have to make it more relevant.
Right.
So you have to make it more relevant to that person's life at that time or the person's life today. And how do you make it more relevant? You add information, or you extract the information from the print or the file there.
While maintaining privacy, right? Because that's the other side of it is, AI is great, and but there's also some concerns there, right? Of how creepy can you get, right?
Right.
Everyone knows. Yeah, go ahead.
Who's in control of the AI? That's what it comes down to. If it's a personal AI or if it's a big cloud AI, those are definitely two things to think about there. But in the instance of a photo print, it'd be great if you pick up a 4x6 print, scan it, and it would come up and tell you additional information about it.
Right.
And I would love it if it would tell me, hey, here's the file name, the digital file name of this photo that you have in front of you. Now you at least have a chance of finding that photo somewhere.
Right.
But even something as simple, as metadata for the time and date, location of where something was taken, that adds relevance to the picture there and helps to create a story. And I think more and more you hear a lot about storytelling and the fact that people want to tell stories, and that's probably one of the reasons why you see a big increase in video capture and vlogging and things like that. And people are interested in telling stories, and you can certainly do that with your photos. It's just a matter of how do you get them organized and how do you put that story together.
You mentioned something before I want to touch on before we kind of move to wrap this up. vlogging, the vlogging or vlogging or however you want to phrase that. It seems to me like that's sort of something that the camera companies have tried to make a feature of their newer cameras, right? They've added flip out screens, and it seems like Sony and Panasonic in particular have come out with vlogging specific cameras. They have better audio capability. They have wider lenses, so you can, when you're doing the vlog thing, I mean, here I'm showing my age, the vlog thing, these kids today, and they're vlogging. What is your insight into that market? Are there really that many people vlogging who that they can't just use their iPhone or their Samsung Galaxy for that?
Yeah, that's a big question in terms of how many people are out there vlogging, and I have yet to find that answer. I don't think anybody actually has the answer to that question. What you do have is you have a lot of aspiring vloggers.
Yes.
So what they're seeing is the influencers and the people that they follow, and they want to be like them. So in that instance, they are going out, they are trying to, act like them, look like them, buy the same equipment that they're using.
Right.
And yes, the smartphones are perfectly acceptable for the vlogging there, but if you are looking for a higher level of quality where you can, in many cases, swap out the lens and you can go from wide angle to telephoto or something like that, depending on what your message is, then you still see a lot of the high-end point-and-shoot cameras, as well as the interchangeable lens cameras being used for vlogging.
It just seems to me like the imaging literacy of today's Gen Z and on up is amazing. Just the ability that that generation has to communicate visually, either through memes or through technology. It's just fascinating. It's an interesting cultural point. I mean, I remember when I used to have to explain to people what a pixel was, right?
Well, what you're describing there, though, Gary, is the fact that these, like I say, Gen Z, Gen Xers, they grew up with digital imaging,
right?
And that's just part of their experience growing up. They don't know a world before digital imaging there,
right?
And actually, there's a quote that I referred to that actually comes from Snap there. I think is really appropriate there, and they talk about where the quote goes: "The camera is the new keyboard, the new language, and how you communicate with each other and access the digital world." And I think in many cases, yeah, you're now talking about image capture as a form of communication versus a way just to preserve memories.
It's interesting you say it, because I remember, gosh, it was in the early 90s. I went to a conference that I think the National Press Association was putting on about photojournalism, and digital was actually just starting to come into play. And there was so much discussion there about what you could and couldn't do with a photograph digitally in a journalism context, right? Like, could you even edit a picture in a way that you couldn't do in a conventional darkroom, right? If you couldn't burn and dodge and crop, you basically shouldn't do it for a news article, because the belief was, people will lose faith in reality if they could look at a news picture and they can't believe it actually happened, that it's not actually news, that it had been manipulated sometime. Fast forward now 20 years later, and you've got manipulation on a wide scale. You can't even believe what anybody's Instagram feed shows.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, back in the days of film, I mean, literally what you saw essentially is what you got, okay, when it came to the film capture and the print. And looking forward to digital today, what you see today is what the digital computational photography algorithm wanted you to get.
Right.
You have not a lot of control over that at this point in time there. So it doesn't even have to reflect reality anymore.
Right.
On the positive side, there could be some opportunity there for things like wall decor or like a metal print, as we talked about. If someone looks at a photo they took and it's, so-so as they took it, but then they add some cool filters to it, and all of a sudden it's become this beautiful photo that they want to make a product out of.
Oh, exactly. And I'm not saying I'm not criticizing it as a bad thing. I'm just saying I'm just observing the change in the market, and that you have people who realize that they can improve a picture with software and get what they want out of that picture. Maybe it was not a great picture. But they realize it has potential to be a great picture with software. And then it's now what I call wall worthy, right? It's worthy of being on your wall, or worthy of being printed for a memory. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact picture as you captured it. So listen, gentlemen, we are kind of running out of time, as I know you're both very busy. Can you kind of give our readers the best ways to reach you?
Yeah, I would recommend that you go to our website, which is just riseaboveresearch.com, and check us out there. We've got a news section where we're listing our press releases, our blogs, and our Twitter feeds as well.
There's also contact information on the website as well if you want to reach out to us with a question or contact or anything.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your expertise. Looking forward to talking to you soon and working more with you in the future.
Thank you, Gary.
That's great.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.